Vasconcelos is a very famous figure in Mexico. He was a writer, he was an activist, but he is best known because he was the first Secretary of Education after the Mexican Revolution. So he basically designed the educational program that is gonna last until the 2000s almost. He was the main supporter of the muralist movement in Mexican art. Under his direction, leading artists, famous artists like Diego Rivera, were commissioned to fill the walls of public buildings with murals. He wrote Estudios Indostánicos in 1919, and that time was marked by the multiple displacements that Vasconcelos suffered during the events of the Mexican Revolution. So he was in exile and traveling a lot across the United States. And it's a very long book that basically classifies all the important philosophical traditions in India. He read all this knowledge in English from Orientalist British sources, and American sources, but also he was reading some Bengali reformers of Hinduism, like Swami Vivekananda, that was super important for him, or Rabindranath Tagore, that was super influential in Latin America by this particular time. But the important thing about that particular book is that he used part of what he wrote there as inspiration for his cultural policy. One of the most important parts of Estudios Indostánicos is when he talks about the precepts of the yogi school. And for Vasconcelos, yoga was related to hygiene. But the important thing about this part is that later on, in his famous literacy campaigns, he included in the documents of those campaigns diet and health programs, and incorporated practices like breathing and meditation that were related to what he wrote in relation to India 3 or 4 years before that. He prescribes a vegetarian diet that's super, super uncommon for this particular time. And I think that what was important about that is that he didn't consider those practices as anti-modern or pre-modern practices, but as a way of modernizing the educational program of the state. I think that's super important because in a way it tells us that Mexican modernity was not only inspired by European models. South Asian and East Asian modernities were also a source of inspiration for many of these figures.